Anita Mellott has had a fascinating journey. You're sure to see the overcoming theme here. She is from Atlanta, Georgia now, but this province plays a very important role in your story, Anita, which I love. But we have to start in India.
We do.
What were your parents doing there?
My father worked in advertising for many years. He had a very lucrative job in advertising, and my mom ran her own private school. So I had a privileged upbringing. And this cracks my husband up because I even had a maid to carry my book bag back and forth from school.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I read chauffeur-driven everywhere?
Yes,
and
a chauffeur-driven car. A few of them, actually.
Wow.
Yes.
Another world.
Yes, it is.
But one you loved.
I did, very much so. In fact, when I was in college, my father decided to go into full-time ministry. And I just didn't like that one bit, because it meant giving up the perks of the affluent lifestyle. So we moved from a 7-bedroom house to a 2-bedroom condo.
No more chauffeurs?
No more chauffeurs, no more book bag maids. And that left me very annoyed and embittered.
You resolved some significant things because of that loss and bitterness.
Yes, I decided to be the best I could, get the best education.
And get back there.
Yes, get the best job and make that money.
How did this affect your spiritual journey? Because this was a strong Christian home.
Yes. Well, actually, when I was 12, my mom led me to the Lord during our morning devotions. And it's interesting because you grew up in a Christian family, you hear the gospel, but all of a sudden something happened that morning and, the Lord just touched me. The light bulbs went off and I knew I needed Jesus. But I think along the way, Moira, I hardened my heart because I wanted what the world had to offer. And I fell in love with the prestige and the affluence and the things that society has to offer rather than Jesus. And when I was in my final year of college, I remember I was sitting for my final exam for my Bachelor of Arts degree, and all of a sudden I collapsed over that paper that I was writing. And so my parents took me home, and the doctor diagnosed me with mononucleosis, which apparently was rare in India at that time. So the doctor started giving me high doses of Motrin or ibuprofen. We did not know that I was highly allergic to that. And my hands and feet got swollen to the point where they were almost balloons. I couldn't use my hands or feet. And I remember I was so ill. I remember vividly just lying there in the bed, and I was drifting in and out of consciousness. And I heard the doctor standing at the foot of my bed saying there's nothing we can do for her. My parents were praying, and my aunt was there, my mom's sister. And I knew I was going to see Jesus in a few minutes.
You knew you were going to die?
I knew I was going to die. And I saw a gate. It was a golden gate. And I remember thinking, Jesus, I'm going to see you in a few minutes. And all of a sudden, a deep sorrow just filled me because I realized I had wasted my life on things that didn't count for eternity. And I remember saying, Jesus, what am I going to show you? What am I going to say to you? Am I going to show you my academic accolades? I mean, they just seemed so trivial in the light of eternity and Jesus. And I said, Lord, I don't know how long or short my life may be, but I really want to live it for you. I guess I went into unconsciousness after that and regained consciousness probably a day or two later.
A new girl.
A new person. That was the turning point. It was a long, hard year physically because I had all kinds of problems after that. The doctor suspected leukemia, and it was a very rough year. I couldn't do my final exam, so I lost a year. I sat for them the next year and I passed. I got my BA. But I was changed inside. My focus was a little different after that.
Did your parents note the difference in their daughter, do you think?
I think they did. They never really said it, but they did.
What brought you to Canada?
Well, I decided that I wanted to do my master's in Canada or in the States, whichever door opened up. And I applied to several universities to do my master's in communication studies. And I had two offers of acceptance, one from the University of Windsor and one from a university in Dallas. But probably 6 months before I was supposed to leave India, we still hadn't made a decision. My aunt had a boutique, a clothing boutique in India. And a lady walked in, a lady from Canada walked in, and she and my aunt started talking. And when my aunt when she found out she was from Canada, my aunt said, "Oh, my niece has got an offer of admission to go to the University of Windsor." And Brenda Jenner said, "I'm from Windsor." I actually grew up in Essex. And so Brenda connected us with her sister and brother-in-law, Vivian and Kevin Bennett, who met me at the airport in Windsor when I flew in.
Isn't God amazing?
He is. He is. And they became my adopted family. I lived with them for 2 years while I studied at the University of Windsor.
All in the family.
Yes.
In this small, small world.
It is.
And we will discover a long connection with a precious couple who've been part of this ministry for, Paul, are you out there? How many years?
We started in 77.
Started in 77. Paul and Gloria Willoughby.
Very special people.
And Crossroads as well, our School of Broadcasting.
Yes.
How did all that come into play?
Well, I think Paul and Gloria got a phone call from Vivian because Vivian did not know how to deal with this young adult who was crying every day because she missed her family in India. And Paul and Gloria had come back from Kenya, Nairobi, and they could deal with culture shock. So they walked me through the throes of culture shock. You know, and our hearts just bonded. They became very special to me. And when I went back to India after I finished my master's, a couple of years later, I had a dream. And in that dream, I saw Paul and Gloria in India.
Before you met them?
No, afterwards.
After
This
you
was
met them, of
afterwards.
course.
Yeah, this was after I finished my master's and I went back to India. And I had this dream where I saw Paul and Gloria there. And I saw their two younger kids. And it disturbed me because I didn't see the older boy, Joel. I couldn't get that dream out of my mind. And so I prayed and I called Paul. I phoned him and I said, "Paul, I had this dream." And he said, "Anu, tell me about it." So I told him. And you know, when we counted back the hours, he had the same dream at that same time.
How is Joel?
And I said, "Paul, Joel's not in the dream." And he said, "I know, Anu, I don't know what it means." But probably a year later, Paul and Gloria then came to India to work with my parents in their communications ministry. And Joel stayed back in Canada, and Jonathan and Becca came to India with their parents.
Wow. Woo. There's more of this stuff in your journey because it gets pretty rough. When were you married?
I was married in 1994.
94. In 1998, you had a baby girl.
I did.
But the journey was very scary. That baby nearly died. And pregnancy,
It was a
fertility,
high-risk one.
the whole thing would be challenged, wouldn't it?
Yes. I actually have what they call a bicornuate uterus, which is a divided uterus. So when I was pregnant, well, first of all, doctors told me I couldn't get pregnant. And one gynecologist said, "Oh, yes, you can." And I did get pregnant. And then I had a preterm labor when I was in my 13th or 14th week. And so I was on bed rest for the rest of the pregnancy. But the day came when I went into labor. I was in labor for 12 hours, and then we lost the heartbeat. There was no heartbeat. And so they prepped me for a C-section. And you know, against all odds, we had our little girl, Priya, who's 13 today.